Welcome back to another edition of the Disney Dish podcast with Jim Hill. It's me, Len Testa, and this is our show for the week of Schmur's Day, December 16th, 2024. On the show today, news. Then I toured Disney's newest housing development, Cotino, which has its own pre-show. And in listener questions, y'all hand Disney's marketing team a bajillion dollars in ideas, and then we answer the question, what's the best World Showcase bathroom? Peabody Award, here we come. Then in our main segment, Jim gives us the history of Disney's Riviera Resort. Let's get started by bringing in the man who asks, who in their right mind thought a newborn baby and mom needed a drum solo? It's Mr. Jim Hill. Jim, how's it going?
The little drummer boy. Len, I have never understood this part of the story of the Christ child. I mean, poor Mary. You're already 9 months pregnant. You have ridden to Bethlehem on the back of a donkey. And because, as with 90% of the couples on the planet, because it's the wife who always makes the travel plans, but this time Joseph said he'd cover it. All right? But no, he drops the ball. And
does he make the hotel reservation?
No. Okay, so there is literally no room at the inn, which I'm betting was a Holiday Inn. Anyway, so Mary and Joseph wind about in the stable where this poor woman has to give birth to the Christ child under conditions that, to be charitable here, Len, couldn't have been sanitary. So you'd obviously want a little rest after an ordeal like that. But who can sleep? Because suddenly there's all this bright light pouring in from all over because this giant star has appeared in the sky over the stable. And then strangers start showing up.
Hey, is this a good time? And then Jim, drum solo.
Well, and the three kings, what a gold, frankincense, and myrrh, and I'm pretty sure with those last two, they need to be immediately refrigerated. If I were Mary, look, this woman had to literally have the patience of a saint, because if
literally, my joke was going to be, this is where the saying comes from.
Yes, no, because if it were me, I would have turned to Joseph at one point and said, could you maybe get up and close the door to the stable before?
Look, do you know these people? Like, this is your side of the family.
There we go. When does the guy with the box full of broken glass show up and say, well, this is an appropriate gift for an infant?
Like no one thinks to bring a casserole? Like what? Yeah, what are we doing here?
No, see, that's it. That's always the joke. The three wise women would have brought a casserole and diapers.
Yeah.
Anyway, just a reminder, folks, if you think you're stressed during the holiday season, remember what Mary went through during the first Christmas. So you running out of Chex Mix and eggnog, that's nothing. Okay?
These are minor problems.
Minor problems.
Fantastic. All right, Jim, let's do a quick shout out to our subscribers. Thanks to everyone who subscribes to the show over at patreon.com/JimHillMedia, including Kyle Brown, Steve Cross, Jim Renson, Chad Tulumalo, Gary Einstein, and Dee Dee Barton. Jim, these are the Animal Kingdom Imagineers who strenuously deny that both of the meat-eating Carnotaurus have broken free, delaying the closure of the dinosaur ride until they're captured. In a sense, they say, isn't the mind its own cage from which there is no escape? Before adding, no, but seriously, there's like a couple of these things loose running around. Look out. True story.
Okay. I was going to put off going to Animal Kingdom anyway, because dinosaurs isn't closing till 2026. So this is definitely getting put off. Wow.
Maybe until things have calmed down.
There we go.
On to the news, folks. The news is sponsored by touringplans.com. Touring Plans helps you save time and money at theme parks like Walt Disney World. Check us out at touringplans.com. All right, Jim, some news out of Disneyland for their 70th birthday, which is coming up next year. There's a new World of Color show that's going to feature characters from Disney's Inside Out and themed to Walt's Disneyland dedication about happiness. And Jim, I mentioned this because I was at Jollywood Nights last night, and there was a Pixar disco thing going on at Pixar Place, like on the way to Toy Story Land. And at one point, they had Frozone, Edna Mode, and Sadness from Inside Out all dancing to Pharrell's Happy. And Sadness was just kind of like shuffling around. And it was great.
Oh, that's glorious.
I know, okay. Yeah. Can't wait to see what they do here.
That's wonderful.
Somebody was really thinking there.
There we go.
It was fantastic. Yeah. Speaking of Jollywood Nights, Jim, I'm going to go out on a limb here and say Jollywood Nights is the merriest Christmas party. I think it's the preferable holiday party. Crowds were very manageable last night. It's not as much walking as the Magic Kingdom. I like it better.
Okay.
The Entertainment was a hoot. Have you seen, Jim, the is it Glisten, the figure skating show that they put on in front of Runaway Railway?
I have not. And in fact, can you definitively answer now, is that actual ice or plastic?
It's plastic. And Jim, it is tiny. Like, I think I looked at that and I was like, okay, figure skating on postage stamp size plastic sheets should be its own Olympic event, like separate from the whole frozen rink thing. We should drive this.
Okay. So no lutzing is what you're saying. Okay.
No. You have no room to build up any speed whatsoever. So it's a lot of like twirling and but super talented. So also I caught the act of the band at the Tip Top Club, which is over back by the Tower of Terror exit, and that was outstanding live singing, like and music. It was lots of people like dressed up for the event, and I think Laurel and I are going to dress up next year too. It helped that it was also pretty cool at night, like in the low 50s, so you could actually wear a jacket and get away with it.
Okay, well, out ahead of next year's event, I'll get you a nice quilted cummerbund.
I was thinking ascot, something glittery. We'll see what happens.
There we go. Okay.
The food was also really good. The popovers are amazing. Have you heard about these, Jim?
No.
So one of them is a holiday turkey popover, which is roasted turkey with mashed potatoes topped with gravy and cranberry sauce in a homemade popover. And then there's a just the sides version, which is mac and cheese with collard greens, cornbread, like crumbs on top in a house-made popover. But Jim, under $13 with tax for both of these.
No.
And honest to God, I would have had them for Thanksgiving.
Wow, those sound great.
Like I was telling Laurel, if these had come in small TV dinner trays where I had to peel back some aluminum foil to eat them, Jim, I would be like, Swanson's done it again. They were really good.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. Now I have to go to Jollywood again. That sounds amazing.
Yeah, it was fantastic. The no waits for anything. I think Runaway Railway was definitely a walk-on. I think we waited 15 minutes for Slinky, but nothing in Galaxy's Edge. Like, Laurel hadn't actually been into any of the Galaxy's Edge shops because of the lines to get in before. So we got to walk through them yesterday, and there were cast members with enough idle time to explain to us everything that was on sale. Like that's how uncrowded it was. Yeah.
Okay.
Plus the studios is really pretty at night. I mean, they had tons of projection mapping stuff up on all the buildings, like along Hollywood Boulevard, like way more than last year, and they were animated, and it was really, really good.
Okay.
So yeah.
Anything not up to standard?
I didn't think Jingle Bam was great. They're doing prep and landing characters.
Yeah.
Which is, I mean, that is a C-list property as far as Disney animation is going. I didn't really understand the background of the story, which is about Santa Claus anyway, but I just didn't get it.
Okay.
And also the pacing's a little slow. So, yeah, but overall, just a fabulous time. Oh. Also, Jim, if you're playing the song-based holiday games Whamageddon or Little Drummer Boy Challenge for the holidays, it is over for you the minute you step in to Hollywood Studios. I think we heard like 3 Little Drummer Boys last night, and then got smashed with Last Christmas as we were walking around. Yeah, like that's your games are both over as soon as you step foot in the park.
One final note here before we jump to the next subject of the show. Prep and Landing, true. C-list property right now. However, we're getting the third of the next year. We're getting the Snowball Protocol. And my understanding is that we're going to see an overhaul of Jingle Bam, the projection show, on the back of that to incorporate not only the footage from the new special, but evidently the folks at Feature Animation out in California have been tasked to actually create animation for the new show.
All right.
Specifically to be projected there on the Chinese theaters. So
let me ask you this question, because I was looking at the characters that were being projected out, and I haven't seen Prep and Landing yet, but are those characters specifically designed to look like the 1960s Rankin Bass Christmas figures? Because I looked at them, I'm like, this could be 60 years ago.
You're not entirely wrong. I mean,
it's not plagiarism, it's homage.
There we go. There we go. I mean, they're of that world, and it is a deliberate choice.
All right. Yeah, that's fine.
Okay.
I get that. And that, stylistically, it looked good. The story and the pacing was off. So
no, good. Wait for 2025, Len. It'll all pay off.
All right. Also, Jim, I was in Palm Springs over Thanksgiving, and I went to see Disney's new housing development, Cotino, in Rancho Mirage. So I am a sucker for a Disney community. I live in Celebration, obviously. I'm recording that from here. And then Disney's got Golden Oak inside Walt Disney World, where, Jim, I note that the 3 houses currently for sale in Golden Oak are priced at a moderate $8.7, $14.5, and $15 million. Well, for reference, Jim, the property taxes and the HOA fees on that $15 million house are $13,000 a month. Anyway, okay. So Laurel, and our friend Jasmine, who was staying with us in Palm Springs, made an appointment months ago to go see Cotino. And I was supposed to go with Drew Taylor because we were supposed to hang out for Thanksgiving, and then the last minute he couldn't make it. That was your co-host.
Yep.
I'm still bitter about that, Drew, if you're listening. Anyway.
Okay.
Because it's California, we decided that if anyone asked if Jasmine was our daughter, we would say that Jasmine was our shaman. So we had a backstory going into it, right?
There we go.
And just for reference too, I have in the show notes a link to a YouTube tour of the 3 houses that we saw at Cotino. So Cotino is currently a construction zone. There's I think there are only model houses that exist, and there are other houses in various stages of completion. But the sales office is huge. And, Jim, it is the full Disney theme park experience.
Okay.
When you get into the sales office, you're greeted in a nice lobby, which looks like a very pretty living room, and it's got couches and built-in storage. And on the shelves are books about, the desert Southwest, about art, and about Disney, right? So they're theming it as you get in, right? So sales rep comes out, we meet her and everything. And then, Jim, we go into, I am not making this up, a pre-show film.
Okay.
It explains how the Imagineers are helping the builders with things like, color and texture and vibe and stuff like that. Okay. And then from there, it's like you walked into Walt's presentation of Epcot. You remember the visual where he's standing in front of a 2-story map of Epcot with a giant pointer? Same thing. You walk into a 2-story room. It's the size of a gym with multiple models of the whole development. One's the 2-story map with the names and types of each section of houses. And so again, you just just think of this as Walt describing Epcot, but also, if Walt was pointing out that, part of World Choke is going to be for the 55 and over crowd, right? This is what we call our senior living development.
There we go. Okay.
All right. So, and then eventually we get to do a tour of model homes. And as far as I can tell, there's only model homes built right now. We looked at 3, the Atelier, the Mardin, and the Melodia, and all of them are by one builder, Shea Homes. I put a link to the floor plan for the Atelier above. And this was the first one. It's the least expensive one. First one we saw, and it was my favorite, Jim. When I say small, it's still 2,200 square feet, which is, objectively large.
Okay.
But Jim, designed so well. Tall ceilings, great layout. I walked in and I was immediately thinking here's where my office is going to be. Here's where we're going to hang out. It's nice. Okay. The main living area is a really big open space that includes the kitchen, a dining area, and the living room, and then a side flex space, which is really just a smaller living room. Tons of windows, so lots of natural light. And the home had optional storage in the kitchen and living room where I think you could actually fit an entire other house. You would never worry where your Tupperware is going again, Jim. It was I was super impressed, immediately walking in. So we've been to Palm Springs together, right?
Yep.
So you know that one of the big things with Palm Springs mid-century modern architecture is the blending of indoor and outdoor spaces.
Oh, absolutely.
Right.
Yeah.
And so even though this is the cheapest home in Cotino, it still does that really well. So imagine if you're standing in the middle of the big space, the dining area, and you're facing the kitchen, then to your right is an L-shaped covered outdoor area, which you get you through glass doors again, lots of natural light. And that area was big enough to entertain pretty much everyone you really like anyway, well enough to invite over for drinks. I don't like that many people, but they would all fit comfortably in this little porch area.
Got it. Okay.
It had an optional pool, which is really small with a hot tub. You're not doing laps in it, but again, It's big enough to fit everyone that you'd ever want to see in a bathing suit at the same time. So like perfectly sized. The primary bedroom had this like walk-in closet that would bring tears of joy to anyone who lives in a city apartment. So I really liked it a lot.
Okay. And now we get to the difficult part of the conversation, the price point.
It's one of the two sort of areas that I found most interesting. So Disney says these houses start at the upper 1 million.
Okay.
And I think with all the options we saw, it was closer to 2 million, which is an insane amount of money for a house in most of the United States, right? Because the average price for a house in the United States is $385,000.
Okay.
But in Palm Springs, like that felt exactly right for what it was.
There we go.
Also, the house is on a lot of the lots are on zero line lots, meaning you're right up against your neighbor's house. And that does kind of constrain the lovely views of the mountains that are all around you right now, because the homes that'll block those views haven't yet been built. But Jim, I'm helpfully told that there are 1 or 2 lots available on the corners for these smaller, cheaper homes. So act soon.
Okay.
And then, Jim, we got to tour the rest of Cotino. So the one big surprise was, and I think you and I have talked about this, Cotino has a lagoon. And remember when the concept art for this came out, it had a rendering of like a really big lake in the middle?
It did.
Not to put too fine a point on it, but Rancho Mirage is in the middle of the Coachella Valley Desert, and California was in the middle of like a sustained drought when this concept art. So I think you and I both thought that a 24-acre lake there was optimistic. That's the word we're going to use.
Polite word of saying it. Yes. Okay. So what did the nice people in the sales office say about this feature?
Jim, it is so much more than a lake. The sales rep starts talking about it, and Laurel and I are looking at each other like, this doesn't sound like a lake. And Laurel started asking questions about it, and then we realized it's not a lake. It's a 24-acre swimming pool.
What?
With filtration and an island and sand beaches. And Jim, part of it is heated outdoors.
Oh.
Okay. Wow. Yes, it is a 24-acre outdoor heated swimming pool with sand and an island. Okay. And again, I apologize again to our sales rep because I turned to Laurel and said, this is an affront to God, right? Like, this, you're just saying, please smite us here in the desert. And then I turned around and I'm like, hey, by the way, where is the nearest church? Because, like, I feel like they need to repent right now.
Wow. That's...
And you know what? It was a lot, Jim. But you know what? There's a fine line between ambition and hubris, and I really like Cotino a lot, and I am absolutely fine with it.
Okay.
I would totally move there tomorrow. If you guys are out that way, definitely stop in for a look. It's some amazing design work. Really, really nice. But yeah, 24-acre outdoor lagoon in the desert.
Wow. That... Okay. All right.
Okay.
And just make a point of not staying next door to the Lot family. Just a lovely woman turned to salt right there in the yard. I don't know what happened.
Laurel started asking questions like, it's a pool? And I don't think they use the word pool. They use like some Disney euphemism for pool. But anyway, it was great.
Holy.
This is an affront to God, isn't it?
Okay.
Anyway, on to listener questions. Jim, we have lots of suggestions from folks on what songs to feature in the Muppets overlay of Rock and Roller Coaster. Julie Pear writes in with this. It has to start with Crazy Train, with Animal yelling the all aboard part and Muppet Bats fleeing in terror out the door over your car. And then the I part has to be done by the chickens. Julie goes on to say that this is our chance to make Fozzie Osbourne a star. And Jim, let me just say that as soon as Disney's accountants hear about this, you're going to feel them running over to consumer products fast enough that it'll register on the Richter scale.
No. Absolutely. Holy cow.
Fozzie Osbourne?
Fozzie?
Like how?
That's brilliant.
How has this not been a thing?
Okay.
And then Chris Ashley writes in with this. Might I suggest a certain chef singing one of the top Swedish rock songs in history, Final Countdown by Europe? Just imagine him meeping the synth riff. This is the thing dreams are made of. I think him and Baker doing it together would just be Like you can see it in your head, right?
Yeah, yeah. No, please let somebody still be workshopping the musical choices. What else have we got?
Brian Collins sent in a video of the Muppets doing the Talking Heads Once in a Lifetime, saying, all I can say is this would be a great addition to mix in. And then Pete Garner wrote in to ask for Miss Piggy doing a cover of ZZ Top's Gimme All Your Lovin'. I mean, some of the band members already have beards. We could do this.
This is true. This is true. All right. No, I love all of these. Please, somebody put them on the whiteboard at Imagineering right now.
I think I wrote back to Pete and I was like, you know what? If they do this and you get one song per ride, it's basically Guardians of the Galaxy, but in the studios. And I would be fine with that. Like, absolutely okay. No problems there. Yeah. All right, Jim. Also on last week's show, we begged project managers to research potential project names before using them based on the new Project Cyclops AI-powered checkouts at Disney's All-Star Resorts. And listeners, you did not disappoint. Mike Rolfing wrote in to say that Disneyland's pre-Galaxy's Edge project to improve pedestrian traffic, known as Project Stardust, was also the Empire's codename for the Death Star, as documented in Rogue One, so it's Star Wars canon.
That's right. Oh.
Yeah.
Wow, that makes removing the planters so much more aggressive. Just
laser beams.
There we go.
You just do it with laser beams.
Coming out of the sky. Oh, wow. Okay.
Also, our friend Jordan wrote in to say that other companies already vet their internal project names. He said, employees at my company were told recently that going forward, all U.S.-based project names must be approved by general counsel and compliance officers because of what just happened to Amazon at the FTC. Amazon had created a process in which the FTC found that if a Prime member wanted to cancel the subscription, it took them 8 to 10 clicks in order to do so, which included trying to entice or steer the member with different options or offers along the way. Internally, Amazon called this process Project Iliad, named for the long odyssey that the member had to go through in order to ultimately cancel.
Wow.
Amazon basically handed this case to the FTC on the project name alone.
Wow. Iliad. That, yes, I go through that exact same process whenever I try to cancel a newspaper subscription. Are you sure? Are you absolutely sure? What about this offer?
Okay, but not only does Iliad imply that it's a long, drawn-out process, but I hasten to point out that everyone with Odysseus on that trip died but him. Yeah. It is bad for multiple reasons.
There we go.
All right. In other news, Brian writes in with something that all of us can relate to. He says, this weekend, my wife Amber and I had our friends Amy and Kel over. In my family, I'm the Disney planner, and in theirs, it's Amy. We were talking about our upcoming trip to Walt Disney World, and Kel began a story about their friend saying, Amy has this friend who's a crazy Disney fan, you know, the kind that has a favorite bathroom in World Showcase. And then Brian explains the pros and cons of every restroom in World Showcase in his head, deciding that the American Adventure is his favorite before thinking to himself, I mean, sure, the Odyssey is in World Showcase, but who? And then he says, my wife nudged me and I realized Kel had finished his story and Amy had asked me a question that I didn't hear. I guess I'm the crazy Disney fan.
Okay. All right.
But I do agree. It has to be the American Adventure bathrooms in World Showcase. Like, they're far enough back. They don't get a lot of traffic. They're clean, plenty of room, nice little shaded area to walk through. Like, it's a pleasant, yeah. All right.
That I could get behind that idea, though. Again, every so often I also see the parent who's got the 2-year-old positioned next to the planter, marking his territory, and
any port in a storm.
There we go. Exactly. Yeah, well, you take enough diabetes medications, like that is actually an option. I should consider that.
Who among us hasn't thought about it?
There we go.
All right, Jim. And last thing, Garrett writes in with a question for you about the Tomorrowland Speedway.
Mm-hmm.
He says, do you think the Cars attraction would have the capacity and appeal to get rid of the Tomorrowland Speedway? We know Disneyland is getting electric vehicles at some point, but nothing has been announced for Walt Disney World. If they do end up putting Speedway on the chopping block, I think Laugh Floor and Buzz could be as well, with their IP existing in the studios. And this could open up a huge Tomorrowland reimagining. So, Jim, I think, talking to our friend Jim Scholl, the Speedway's been on borrowed time, right? Since Tron came to the Magic Kingdom.
Yeah, and remember, as far back as when Mickey's Birthday Land opened, they crept in the footprint of the Grand Prix at that point, I think was the name that it was going by. Yeah, but at the same time, I guess we need to talk about capacity and the fact that even in this generation of little kids, there still is the desire to get behind the wheel. And I think the Cars experience, at least as it's been described most recently with the trackless and off-roading and that sort of thing, different appeal.
Right. You're not going to get to drive those. You're pretty much a passenger in the car.
There we go. But interesting. The weird thing in Florida is there's always that phrase that Walt used, the blessing of size. But at the same time, when you look at all of the folks right now who are making specific trips over to the Magic Kingdom to get in, that one last trip on the Liberty Bell, sometimes the blessing of size doesn't mean what we think it means, I guess.
Right. I think Tomorrowland has to be the next thing that gets refurbed in the Magic Kingdom. I mean, Stitch's Great Escape has been empty for years. Tomorrowland is on borrowed time. The Monsters Laugh Floor could move to the studios. So really, the only thing that I could conceivably see staying is Buzz and Carousel of Progress in that area. I mean, Space Mountain and Tron are fine, but I mean, that's a lot of potential development.
It is. It's a lot of real estate, but somebody's got to have a vision.
Right.
The future, I mean, if we just look what happened with Future World over at Epcot with now World Nature, World Discovery, and World Celebration. It's like, future, what is this thing you call the future?
That's the problem with it. It keeps coming.
There we go.
All right, folks, we're going to take a quick commercial break. When we come back, Jim gives us the history of Disney's Riviera Resort, which opened this week back in 2019. We'll be right back. And we're back. All right, Jim. 5 years ago.
Yep.
The Riviera Resort opened. I was there.
Were you really? You were there for opening day?
I was. Opening day. I love opening day for a Disney resort. In fact, this week I'm at the Island Tower. So this is timely for a number of reasons.
Well, there we go. And the Island Tower, is that officially the 16th DVC? Because as I understand it, when the Riviera Resort opened back in December of 2019, it was the 15th DVC that had ever been built.
Yeah, I'm thinking, or are you counting over at Wilderness Lodge, are you counting Copper Creek and Boulder Ridge as two separate DVCs?
That's where it gets interesting. The DVC folks seem to lump them as one.
I think anything with a different name is unique.
Okay.
And plus the lodging at Copper Creek and Boulder Ridge are vastly different. So I think that those are two separate.
Okay, I could get behind
two separate units, let's say.
Okay. But again, we're talking about the property that now stands at the corner of East Buena Vista Drive and Chellalonia Parkway, which leads over to Bonnet Creek. And look, when people talk about real estate, Len, as we just were on the front half of today's show with Cotino, the old cliche about location, it comes up. And in the case of the Riviera Resort, with its French-Italian Riviera theme,
sure,
this is basically true. This 300-room hotel was built on that precise location for a very specific reason. Executives at Disney Parks, Experiences, and Products ordered that all of the Barbados section of the Caribbean Beach Resort be flattened, not to mention half of Martinique, all because, well, all right. Okay, I'm getting ahead of myself here. Once upon a time, and we're talking the late 70s here, Len, this corner of Disney World property was not considered desirable real estate. In fact, if we think back to 76, 77, 78, when Disney had all of that heavy earth-moving equipment over doing site prep at Epcot, Len, they are digging where World Showcase Lagoon is going to come across, and they come across a unique Florida phenomena, which is a root mass.
Oh, so from like a bunch of trees, just all like intertwined.
Oh yeah, but this root mass is acres length. So they pull it out of the ground, they haul it across the street. In fact, they pretty much dropped it where old Port Real, the what is it? Now it's the check-in, but also food court and retail.
Food court,
yeah.
For Caribbean Beach.
Yeah, they leave it there. And Len, you've spent enough time driving around Disney property that you know if you ever manage to get over by Bear Lake Road, which is kind of where the waste treatment plant for Walt Disney World is located, it sometimes gets a little whiffy.
The smell of methane in the morning.
There we go. Okay. Now, on the other hand, if you manage to drive along Buena Vista Drive while this root mass was in the process of, drying out, but also decaying, I mean, you didn't just roll up your windows, Len. You literally drove past the thing with your mouth closed and not breathing. Like
it gets in your clothes.
Oh. But now, what's kind of ironic about this whole thing, if you talk with Dick Nunes around the same time, he was made president of Disney's Outdoor Recreation Division. That was the arm of the company at that time. We're talking late 70s, early 80s, that controlled where the theme parks were going. He was already thinking about putting a hotel back in this specific section of Disney World property. And there is this amazing interview that Dick did for the Eyes and Ears. That's the weekly newspaper that was distributed to cast members back then. And he talked about, and he did this interview September of 82, just before Epcot opened. And so he got asked, okay, what are we doing after Epcot Center opens? And Dick describes how after Epcot opens and is a huge success, his plan is, again.
Okay, all right, okay. Looking forward.
What he wanted to do, and this is fascinating, that he anticipated that, yes, we have empty slots around World Showcase Lagoon, but we already have other countries lined up. We got Spain, we got all these folks that are coming on board, Equatorial Africa. We're going to need room for further countries. So what I want to do is dig a smaller lagoon. In fact, it's really more of a reflecting pool shape out behind the American Adventure. And the idea is that, picture this. Picture the reflecting pool between the Washington Monument and the Lincoln Memorial. And on either side of that lagoon, you had space for 2 more countries. So 4 more countries to be added to World Showcase. But at the other end, the opposite end from the American Pavilion, there was not only going to be an Australian pavilion, which was modeled after the Sydney Opera House, but there would...
I remember this. Yeah.
There was also going to be an Australian-themed hotel. And now, mind you, what's fascinating about this, Len, is that Nunes is kind of ahead of his time here. I mean, America, at this point, has a love affair with all things Australia, but it really doesn't get going fully passionately till September of 86 when Crocodile Dundee opens in theaters. But Disney has this research in hand that says Americans have a fondness for Australia, and this is why adding a pavilion and a hotel would be a very smart play for phase 2 of Epcot. Now, I just did a side here, Len. Again, as somebody who went to the movies in the late 70s and early 80s, my take on Australia, based on the George Miller movies, Mad Max,
exactly.
Warrior, I'm not.
It's a desert hellscape with lots of
muscle cars. All right,
yeah.
And by the way, I also just want to point out that I know that the Studios is traditionally the park down in Florida that celebrates film, but we just did have Test Track close in June of last year, and for a new update with new show scenes and an enhanced queue and that sort of thing. But I can't help but think, Len, that look. Think about where the old GM World of Motion building is located in World Discovery. Yep. It really cozies right up against the Mexico Pavilion, so this could be part of World Showcase. So think about
Jim.
It's the Australian pavilion, Len.
It's down under from Mexico.
There we go. Are you?
Okay, I'm agreeing with you here, but also remember the Guardians of the Galaxy Pavilion is technically a World Showcase Pavilion, according to Disney. So this works. Okay, so all right, so it's Australia, and you're designing an Australian car.
Well, no,
like a Mondeo. Like, what do you?
You lead into the George Miller thing. You suddenly you are Mad Max. You're Furiosa. You've designed.
You're designing your Thunderdome mobile.
There we go. In the queue. All right.
Tina Turner's doing the background music.
I'm just saying that there's an opportunity. And I got to say, they still haven't opened Test Track 3.0. There's time to do this, Lance.
There's still time.
There's still time. All right.
Oh, my God. That's genius. All right. Okay. There's our pitch.
There we go.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, back to reality now. Epcot Center opens in October of 82. Features some obviously impressive stuff, but we have to be honest here. It stumbles coming out of the gate. It fails to meet the company's and let's be honest here, Len, Wall Street's expectations when it comes to attendance levels and merch. Negatively impacts Disney's stock price, which catches the attention of opportunistic green mailers like Saul Steinberg and Ivan Boesky. We now jump ahead 2 years, October of 84. Disney has a brand new CEO, Michael Eisner. More to the point, this new CEO has been given very specific marching orders by the Bass brothers, the Texas billionaires who helped Michael get the gig, and that's develop Walt Disney World, get some new theme parks down there, especially hotels, so that the resort can start making even more money. So, look, obvious place to start with a new hotel. That chunk of property on the edge of Seven Seas Lagoon. I mean, that where the Asia Hotel was supposed to go, 500 rooms, was supposed to begin construction early in 73, got tripped up by the Arab oil embargo, temporarily placed on hold, and never got started again. Anyway, that site is already prepped, ready to go. And what's interesting is that Nunes, in this same interview where he talks about the Australia Hotel, talked about how, well, at the site of the Asia Hotel, we're looking at a new idea. Henry Flagler, the founder of Standard Oil, he built all of these amazing seaside resorts down in Florida in the 1890s and the early 1900s.
Oh, this was part of the railroad expansion to Florida.
There we go. Yeah.
Okay.
So that's what we're looking at. And what's interesting is when Eisner comes through the door and Dick shows him this idea, he says, yes, I will get behind that idea with one caveat. And Len, I swear to God, right, it wasn't Mr. Schul who shared the story, but it was another person who spent a lot of time in the room with Michael Eisner. And basically, Michael had become convinced, and this is him coming through the door at Disney, that when people went on vacation to Florida, one of the main reasons they traveled down to the Sunshine State was that at some point during their trip, they were going to want to go to the ocean and then lounge on the beach. So this is why the first two hotels that Michael personally okays for construction at Walt Disney World had to have the word beach in their name. All right.
Even though Orlando is like an hour and a half.
No, that's it exactly. Little Cocoa Beach is 74 miles away, the closest beach. But so think about it.
Okay. So not only Michael Eisner, because if you fly into Orlando International Airport to this day, you see advertisements for the beach.
Oh, no.
So
absolutely.
it's not just Eisner's crazy idea.
Oh, no.
This is an actual marketing thing that Central Florida has.
I get it, but think about it. Grand Floridian Beach Resort opens June 28th, 1988. And then the Caribbean Beach Resort opens just 3 months later, October 1st of that same year. And thank goodness Michael eventually gave up on inserting the word beach in the name. So,
well, there's one more.
Well, no, but in fact, he wouldn't give up on the aquatic theme. So next couple of years, think about it. January 1990, we get the Swan. July 1990, we get the Dolphin. November of that same year, November 5th, we get the Yacht Club. And as you pointed out, 2 weeks after the Yacht Club opens, we actually just get the Disney Beach Club. Club Resort. And what I love about that is at that point, it's Michael reverting to form, totally abandoning that we're in the central part of the state. It's like, no, him insisting, it's right next to the beach. Stop asking questions.
All right, Jim, let me point out this, though. So when in the area of the Epcot resorts, we have the Boardwalk, Yacht Club, and Beach Club, and they are adjacent to Epcot. Mm-hmm. Let me point out that the geography of the Boardwalk, Yacht Club, and Beach Club, like the source that they're inspired from, basically makes them together the New Jersey World Showcase Pavilion.
Wow. Oh, I love that.
Okay. Go ahead. Please continue. Go ahead.
No. Oh, boy.
It's
sorry.
like New Jersey has its own thing.
There we go.
In World Showcase. Fine.
Okay.
Fine. Go ahead.
That's, literally, that. What exit are you staying at Walt Disney World?
They should be little signs.
There we go. All right. So anyway, okay. So we've talked about the Grand Flow Beach Resort. Let's now talk about the Caribbean Beach, which, by the way, interesting little bend on the story. Both of those projects, high-end deluxe monorail resort, and again, Disney's first moderate, both had a budget of $135 million, and both were completed for that price point.
Well, one was 2,000 rooms, and one wasn't.
No, well, there we go. Now,
right.
Okay, but remember that, as you mentioned, the Caribbean Beach Resort aimed at a different clientele. That these are for the folks who drive down to Florida, and when they're there for Disney World and the other attractions in Central Florida, they opted to stay out on iDrive or down in Kissimmee along 192 in a chain hotel or a mom and pop motel. And now again, it was a different mindset. Prior to Eisner's arrival. Again, I want to quote from Dick Nunes. Again, September of '84, he was asked about those off-property hotels and motels, and Dick said the quiet part out loud. He said, look, we make a lot of money down here at Walt Disney World, and we want to be thought of as a good neighbor in Orlando. So if some nickels and dimes roll off the table and wind up in the pockets of those people who run the hotels and the chain restaurants along iDrive and 192, well, the dollars that people spend when they come to the park still stay with us, so why not share the wealth? There's enough here for everybody, right? And that.
Oh, those were the days.
Those were the days. I mean,
you silly boy, Dick.
Yeah, I know. Once Eisner came through the door, and again with the marching orders from the Bass Brothers, suddenly Disney laser focused in on those nickels and dimes, and in fact, at that point, every penny counted. But
yeah.
But Disney had never built a hotel that was aimed at people who stayed at iDrive and 192. So what would that look like? So the Disney Development Company, which was a new division of the Mouse House that Eisner had set up to specifically concentrate on creation of resorts and restaurants and retail space, it holds an invitation-only competition in 1985. And Fogelberg Koch, an architectural firm based in Winter Park, still there, by the way, decides to submit an entry. And their idea for Disney's first ever moderate resort was to embrace a tropical adventure theme. It would be made up of these clusters of two-story buildings, which were modeled after the Kunuka houses that you find in the Caribbean. These are the local traditional bungalows.
Is that where that layout came from? Like that was a specific intentional design?
That's it exactly. In fact, if you Google that name, you will see a building that looks very, very much like the two-story houses that you find at Caribbean Beach Resort. But anyway, what Fogelberg Koch suggested is these cluster of two-story buildings be grouped in villages where each of the houses in the village would feature 64 guest rooms. And then to make it easier for guests to remember which village their room was located in, well, first of all, each village would be named after a specific island in the Caribbean. More to the point, each village would have a very specific color palette, not just the walls of the structures, but also the metal roofs. And the folks at Disney Development loved this idea, which is why after some minor tweaks, construction begins June of '87. With, by the way, Len, job number one being hauling away that now dried root mass.
I mean, it's dried out. It's substantially smaller than it used to be.
There we go. Okay, so October 1st, 1988, phase one of Caribbean Beach Resort opens. First ever Disney-owned and operated moderate resort in Florida. By the way, when it was completed in July of the following year, it was the fifth largest hotel complex in all of Florida.
Wow.
But for opening day, they only had 768 rooms available. As you mentioned, at full build out, it was, I want to say,
2,112.
There we go. Okay, so anyway, and back then, if you want to be nostalgic, folks, opening day at Caribbean Beach Resort, you could pay $49 a night for a parking lot view, $59 a night for a pool view, and then $69 for a view of Barefoot Bay, and that's the 42-acre freshwater lagoon that this 200-acre resort was built around. And
wow, those were the days.
They were, but hugely popular with guests right from the get-go. In fact, it was virtually impossible to get a room at Caribbean Beach Resort that first year. So construction crew went into overdrive, and like I said, they got the rest of those 2,000 plus rooms open by July of '89.
Yeah,
and moderates. Brand new market segment for Walt Disney World. But then again, Len, so was DVC. In fact, what's interesting is it's not 6 months later, after full completion of the Caribbean Beach Resort in January of 1990, that the Disney company announces that it's stepping into the timeshare space.
Really? So both of these ideas were happening at the same time in the company?
Well, I think you and I have talked previously about that famous charrette on property. In fact, I want to say, I forget whose personal papers you went into.
Oh, the Buzz Price Archives with the 10 ideas going forward. This is right before Eisner became CEO, and they everyone sits down, the leadership team sits down and figures out what they want to do next.
There we go. And
I'll find the we have the memo in our show notes. I'll go back and find it.
Okay. So how do we go from Caribbean Beach Resort being Walt Disney World's first moderate to then becoming the site of the company's 15th Disney Vacation Club? That's going to take 2 more installments of the series line, with next week's installment talking about how the Caribbean Beach Resort mutates over the next 30 years, with a particular focus on when Disney's Pirates of the Caribbean movie franchise.
Pirate bathrooms, Jim. Pirate bathrooms.
There we go. I mean, just starting in July of 2003, suddenly it's like, I guess we have to live up to our name now. And what do you do when you're under that much pressure to suddenly become piratical?
I love it. I mean, I really like Caribbean Beach. It was the first Disney resort I ever stayed at.
Oh, yeah.
They'd never build anything like that again because of the way that the buildings are located. I mean, to your point, it's accurate in terms of Caribbean architecture, right? The color scheme is right. I get why they did the countries for organizational schemes, but they're never going to build that many detached buildings as a resort again. It's just never going to happen. But still, it still looks great.
It does. But there were so many lessons that they learned on that, for example, if you could recall, their next project for the company was actually Port Orleans and Riverside. And lots of lessons learned that were fixed and adjusted for the next moderate.
It's funny you mentioned that because you can see at Riverside, Port Orleans Riverside, the combination of going back to big buildings plus the little semi-detached organizations. It's kind of like a blend of two different architecture styles.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Yeah, that's great. I will say this. I mean, Caribbean Beach still looks great. If you're staying at the Riviera or you're staying at Caribbean Beach, definitely grab a drink and go for a walk at dusk or at nighttime.
Oh, yeah.
Because it really, really looks good at night. It's a great resort to walk around.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, cool. All right, looking forward to the next installment of this one, Jim. All right, folks, that's going to do it for the show today. You can help support our show by subscribing over at patreon.com/JimHaleMedia, where we're posting exclusive shows every week. Our most recent show was on when Walt apologized for the state of Disneyland's Tomorrowland back in the 1960s. And on next week's show, I stay at Disney's new Island Tower at the Polynesian, and Jim continues the history of Disney's Riviera Resort. You can find more of Jim at jimhillmedia.com and more of me, Len, at touringplans.com. We're produced spectacularly by Eric Hersey and David Gray, who'll be showcasing their new line of prom-themed frozen sculptures, including Enchanted Forest, Masquerade, and Starry Night, at the Carlisle Ice Art Festival starting January 31st, 2025, in downtown Carlisle. That's the intersection of High and Hanover, I think, in beautiful downtown Carlisle, Pennsylvania. While Eric and David are doing that, please go into iTunes and rate our show and tell us what you'd like to hear next. For Jim, this is Len. We will see you on the next show.
You may find yourself living in a shotgun shack, and you may find yourself in another part of the world, and you may find yourself behind the wheel of a large automobile, and you may find yourself in a beautiful house with a beautiful wife, and you may ask yourself, well, how did I get here? Letting the days go by, letting the water